Have you ever looked at your life and wondered, why does it feel like everyone else is moving forward except me? Why do some people seem to receive opportunities so easily, while I keep walking through storms? Why does God seem to bless others openly, while I continue fighting battles nobody can see? If you've ever asked those questions, this message is for you. Because throughout history, God has always worked in a pattern. Before promotion, there is preparation. Before abundance, there is testing. Before elevation, there is separation. And before wealth comes to the chosen one, God often sends signs. Not signs that look impressive, not signs that look successful, not signs that make people applaud, but signs that most people misunderstand. Signs that often feel painful. Signs that sometimes feel unfair. Signs that make ordinary people quit. Yet those same signs have appeared in the lives of countless men and women who later stepped into extraordinary seasons. The tragedy is that many people abandon their journey because they misinterpret the process. They mistake preparation for punishment. They mistake isolation for rejection. They mistake delay for denial. And they walk away from the very season that was preparing them for abundance. Tonight, I want to show you what happens before wealth arrives. Not just financial wealth, but purpose, influence, opportunity, leadership, legacy, because true wealth is bigger than money. And the chosen one must first become the person capable of carrying what God is about to place in his hands. Sign number 1: God begins removing people. This is usually the first sign, and it is often the most painful. The chosen one begins noticing that certain relationships start changing. People he expected to stay, leave. Conversations become distant. Friendships lose their connection. Some people stop supporting him. Others stop understanding him. And for a season, it feels lonely. Very lonely. Most people interpret this as rejection, but heaven often calls it repositioning. Because every level of growth requires a different environment. Think about a seed. A seed cannot become a tree while remaining inside the packet. Something has to separate. Something has to break open. Something has to change. And the same is true for the chosen one. God begins removing distractions, removing dependencies, removing comfort zones, not because he wants to hurt you, but because he wants to prepare you. Some people are assignments, others are attachments, and one of the hardest lessons in life is learning the difference. You see, many people want a greater future, but they refuse to release the relationships connected to their smaller past. And God understands something we often forget. The people around you influence the person you become. If you spend your life surrounded by fear, you will eventually think fearfully. If you spend your life surrounded by mediocrity, you will eventually accept mediocrity. If you spend your life surrounded by excuses, you will eventually become an excuse maker. So before God expands your life, he often adjusts your environment. The chosen one suddenly feels different. Not better, different. He begins wanting different conversations, different goals, different habits, different priorities. And because of that, some people naturally drift away. Do not fear this season. Not every departure is a loss. Some departures are preparation. Sign number 2. Nothing satisfies you anymore. This sign confuses many people. Because from the outside, their life appears normal. But inside, something feels restless. The chosen one wakes up each morning feeling like there must be more. More purpose, more growth, more meaning, more impact. The things that once entertained him no longer satisfy him. The habits he once enjoyed begin feeling empty. The comfort he once protected begins feeling like a prison. He starts asking deeper questions. Why am I here? What am I becoming? What is my purpose? What am I supposed to build? And these questions refuse to leave. This is not frustration. This is awakening. Because before God changes your circumstances, he often changes your appetite. The chosen one develops a hunger that ordinary success cannot satisfy. A hunger for purpose, a hunger for growth, a hunger for significance. And that hunger becomes the fuel that pushes him forward. Most people stay where they are because they become comfortable. But the chosen one becomes uncomfortable. And discomfort becomes the beginning of transformation. Sign number 3. God reveals your weaknesses. This is where many people become discouraged, because instead of immediately receiving blessings, they begin seeing flaws, weaknesses, bad habits, fear, laziness, procrastination, pride, anger, self-doubt. Suddenly, everything hidden starts coming to the surface, and it can feel overwhelming. But there is a reason for this. Imagine building a skyscraper. Would you start with the roof? Or would you inspect the foundation? God works the same way. Before he increases responsibility, he exposes weakness. Before he expands your influence, he strengthens your character. Because wealth does not solve character problems, it magnifies them. Money makes disciplined people more effective, and it makes undisciplined people more dangerous. Influence makes wise people more impactful, and it makes foolish people more destructive. So before heaven expands your life, heaven examines your foundation. The chosen one enters a season where God begins pointing at areas that need improvement, not to shame him, but to strengthen him, not to condemn him, but to prepare him. And if you are in a season where your weaknesses seem impossible to ignore, do not panic. You may be closer to growth than you realize. There comes a moment in every chosen person's journey when something begins changing on the inside. The outside world may not see it. Friends may not notice it. Family may not understand it. But heaven sees it. And that change becomes one of the greatest signs that preparation is taking place. Because before God changes your circumstances, he changes your habits. Before he changes your environment, he changes your mindset. Before he changes your bank account, he changes your character. And this brings us to the next sign. Sign number 4. You fall in love with discipline. There was a time when you only worked when you felt motivated. You waited until you felt inspired. You waited until conditions were perfect. You waited until you felt ready. But something changed. Now you move even when you don't feel like it. You pray when you're tired. You work when you're exhausted. You learn when others are sleeping. You continue when nobody is applauding. And that is the moment discipline begins replacing emotion. Most people build their lives on feelings. The chosen one learns to build his life on principles. Because feelings change, weather changes, moods change, opinions change, but discipline remains. There are mornings when the chosen one wakes up and nothing feels exciting. No motivation, no inspiration, no visible results. Yet he continues. Why? Because he understands something most people never learn. The future belongs to those who continue when continuing becomes difficult. The gym is empty at 5 a.m. The library is quiet late at night. The road toward greatness is usually lonely. Not because greatness is impossible, but because discipline is rare. And God often watches how a man handles small responsibilities before entrusting him with larger ones. Can you be faithful with little? Can you stay consistent without recognition? Can you remain focused without immediate reward? These are the questions preparation answers. The chosen one slowly becomes the type of person who no longer needs constant encouragement, because he develops something stronger, self-control. And self-control becomes one of the foundations of lasting success. Sign number 5, the delays become longer. This is where many people lose heart, because just when it feels like the breakthrough is close, another delay appears. Another obstacle, another setback, another waiting season. The chosen one begins wondering, God, what is taking so long? He sees people around him moving ahead, getting opportunities, receiving promotions, launching businesses, achieving goals. Meanwhile, he feels stuck. But what he cannot see is what heaven sees. He sees the delay. God sees the preparation. He sees the waiting. God sees the building. He sees closed doors. God sees protection. Sometimes the delay is not punishment. Sometimes it is protection. Imagine giving a 17-year-old the responsibilities of a 40-year-old. The blessing would crush him, not because the blessing is bad, but because the person is not yet prepared. God understands timing better than we do. The chosen one learns a difficult lesson. Everything that is late is not lost. Everything that is delayed is not denied. Sometimes heaven is preparing opportunities that require a stronger version of you. a wiser version, a more disciplined version, a more mature version. And when that version finally arrives, the opportunity arrives too. Many people quit during the delay. The chosen one grows during the delay. That difference changes everything. Sign number 6. Your vision becomes bigger than your current life. One day something unusual begins happening. You start seeing possibilities. Ideas arrive unexpectedly. Solutions appear in your mind. Dreams become clearer. Your imagination expands. You begin thinking beyond survival, beyond paying bills, beyond simply getting through another week. You begin asking, what can I build? What can I create? How many people can I help? What legacy can I leave behind? This is significant because before God expands your reality, He often expands your vision. A farmer cannot harvest crops he never planted. A builder cannot construct what he cannot imagine. A leader cannot guide people toward a destination he cannot see. The chosen one starts seeing life differently. Problems become opportunities. Challenges become lessons. Failures become teachers. Obstacles become stepping stones. While others focus on limitations, he begins focusing on possibilities. And people around him notice the change. Some are inspired. Others become uncomfortable. Because vision changes a person. Once your eyes open to a greater future, it becomes impossible to return to thinking small. The chosen one begins realizing that his current circumstances are temporary. His future becomes larger than his present reality. And that realization creates hope. Powerful hope. The kind of hope that keeps a man moving when results are still invisible. Sign number 7. People stop understanding you. This sign surprises many people because they expect growth to bring universal support. Instead, it often brings misunderstanding. Friends begin questioning your decisions. Family members become confused. People who once related to you no longer understand your priorities. Some say you've changed. Others say you've become distant. And perhaps they're right. You have changed. Because growth changes people. The chosen one begins protecting his time differently. Protecting his energy differently. Protecting his focus differently. He becomes intentional. He becomes purposeful. He becomes selective. Not because he thinks he's better than others, but because he understands that every destination requires sacrifice, and not everyone is willing to make that sacrifice. One of the loneliest moments in life is realizing that your vision has outgrown your environment. The conversations around you no longer inspire you. The habits around you no longer challenge you. The thinking around you no longer stretches you. And suddenly, you feel alone. But listen carefully. Isolation and loneliness are not always the same thing. Sometimes God allows isolation because concentration is necessary. The greatest discoveries in history often happened in seasons of solitude. The strongest leaders often developed during quiet seasons. The deepest growth frequently happens where there is no audience. The chosen one learns to become comfortable walking a path others cannot yet understand, because he knows something important. Not everyone will understand your calling. Not everyone will understand your preparation. Not everyone will understand your purpose. And that's okay. They don't need to understand it. They only need to witness the results later. The signs are becoming clearer now. The separation, the discomfort, the exposure of weaknesses, the discipline, the delays, the expanding vision, the misunderstanding. Each one feels uncomfortable, yet each one carries a purpose, because God is not only preparing blessings, He is preparing the person who will carry those blessings.
The final signs: purpose, service, peace, the revelation. There comes a moment in the life of every chosen one when the journey begins making sense. Not because all the answers have arrived, not because every prayer has been answered, not because every battle has ended, but because something changes within him. The confusion begins turning into clarity. The frustration begins turning into wisdom. The waiting begins turning into understanding. And suddenly, he realizes that everything he thought was working against him was actually working for him. The delays, the heartbreaks, the failures, the loneliness, the discipline, the preparation, none of it was wasted. Because before God gives a man abundance, he first teaches him stewardship. Before God gives him influence, he teaches him responsibility. Before God gives him wealth, he teaches him purpose. And this brings us to one of the most important signs of all. Sign number 8. The chosen one becomes obsessed with purpose. At first, he wanted money. Nothing wrong with that. Most people do. He wanted freedom, security, comfort, a better life. But over time, something shifts. The chosen one begins asking different questions. Not, how much money can I make? But, what was I created to do? Not, how can I become famous? But, how can I become useful? Not, how can I impress people? But, how can I serve people? This is a powerful transformation, because purpose changes everything. A man without purpose becomes distracted. A man with purpose becomes focused. A man without purpose follows crowds. A man with purpose creates direction. A man without purpose chases pleasure. A man with purpose chases meaning. And meaning always outlasts pleasure. The chosen one begins realizing that success alone is not enough. Money without purpose feels empty. Influence without purpose feels dangerous. Achievement without purpose feels incomplete. He begins understanding that his life is connected to something bigger than himself. A mission, a calling, an assignment. And once purpose becomes clear, discipline becomes easier. Sacrifice becomes easier. Consistency becomes easier. Because purpose gives pain a reason. Sign number 9. God teaches him to serve. This lesson is often overlooked. Everyone wants leadership. Few want service. Everyone wants influence. Few want responsibility. Everyone wants the crown. Few want the preparation. The chosen one discovers a principle that changes his life. The people who create the most value often receive the greatest rewards. Before wealth arrives, he learns to solve problems. Before influence arrives, he learns to help people. Before recognition arrives, he learns to contribute. He starts asking, what can I build? What can I improve? What can I offer? How can I make life better for others? Because true wealth often follows usefulness. The world rewards value. The world rewards solutions. The world rewards contribution. And God often teaches the chosen one to focus on serving before receiving. This is difficult because our culture teaches the opposite. It teaches people to take, to demand, to expect. But the chosen one learns to create, to build, to contribute, to give. And through that process, he becomes someone others trust, someone others respect, someone others follow. Because service creates influence, and influence creates opportunity. Sign number 10. A strange peace begins to appear. This sign is different because it cannot be measured. It cannot be purchased. It cannot be explained. Yet it is one of the strongest indicators that something is changing. The chosen one begins experiencing peace. Not because life becomes easy, not because all his problems disappear, not because everything suddenly works out, but because he begins trusting the process. The panic starts fading. The desperation starts fading. The constant need for immediate answers starts fading. And in its place comes confidence. Quiet confidence. The kind that does not need attention. The kind that does not need validation. The kind that does not need constant proof. He realizes that every season has a purpose. Every delay has a lesson. Every challenge has value. Every struggle is producing strength. And because of that understanding, fear begins losing its power. The chosen one no longer wakes up consumed by anxiety. He wakes up with determination. He no longer obsesses over timing. He focuses on preparation. He no longer compares his journey to everyone else's. He focuses on becoming the person he was called to become. And that peace becomes powerful. Because panic makes people quit. Peace helps people endure. The revelation. Now listen carefully, because this may be the most important thing you hear tonight. Most people spend their lives praying for wealth, but very few pray to become the person capable of handling wealth. Most people ask God for opportunities, but they resist preparation. Most people want the blessing, but they avoid the process. The chosen one eventually discovers something life-changing. The greatest gift was never the money. The greatest gift was the transformation. Because money can be lost, businesses can fail, markets can change, circumstances can shift, but the person you become cannot be taken away. The discipline, the wisdom, the character, the resilience, the faith, the self-control, the vision, those things remain. And that is why God focuses on the man before the blessing. Because once the man is ready, the blessing becomes sustainable. Perhaps you are in one of those seasons right now. Perhaps people have left. Perhaps opportunities seem delayed. Perhaps your life feels uncomfortable. Perhaps you feel misunderstood. Perhaps you are fighting battles nobody else can see. Do not lose heart. The forge is hot for a reason. Gold is refined in fire. Steel is strengthened under pressure. And chosen people are prepared through process. The signs may not look impressive. The signs may not look successful. The signs may not look like wealth. But that does not mean wealth is not coming. Because before abundance appears externally, it usually appears internally. Before God changes your circumstances, He changes you. And if these signs are appearing in your life, then perhaps heaven is doing more than you realize. Perhaps the delays are preparation. Perhaps the isolation is protection. Perhaps the discipline is construction. Perhaps the discomfort is direction. And perhaps the very season you have been questioning is the season preparing you for everything you have been praying for. So keep building, keep growing, keep believing, keep preparing, because when the opportunity finally arrives, it will not be looking for the old version of you. It will be looking for the person the process created. And when that day comes, you will understand. The blessing was coming all along. But first, God had to prepare the chosen one. The chosen forged by pressure. Prepared for purpose. Destined for impact.